Hey, how's it going? Mike from LI Flies Mike here, and as always, the full list of materials will be down in the description below. Today we're going to be using the Umpqua XS506H size 1. It's essentially their 60-degree jig hooks that are a little bit stronger. And today we're going to be using some monofilament thread and taking a fly that we covered recently and turning it upside down. And that's going to be the Cowen's baitfish fly that we covered recently. So we're going to be starting off as usual with this fly with our 0.035 diameter lead wire. And we're going to start by building a lead keel on the fly. Now what I like to do is take the lead wire and angle it away from myself so it's sticking offset to the hook shank. And then that'll allow me to kind of have a nice baseline. You want to make sure you wrap it down nice and tight here so it doesn't move. And then I just grab the spool of wire, keeping it tight, and spin my vise around. You can always, of course, wrap the lead wire by hand. The idea is by having that lead wire offset at the start here, it's a little bit easier to kind of get it squared up when I push this lead wire together, and I hate having the lead wire sitting on top of itself. I like having a nice smooth body. So now we can go ahead after squeezing the lead wire together and get it nice and compact. And having it somewhere around in the middle section of the fly. I like going about somewhere anywhere from, you generally want around ½ an inch worth of lead wire on there. Somewhere in that general vicinity. We're going to cover it in some thread wrapping so it doesn't move on us. And then we can go ahead and get ready to cover it with some Bill's body braid. Now by taking some Bill's body braid here, we're not only going to cover up this lead wire so it's much more visually pleasing, but it'll give us a little bit of a smoother surface to work with because we're not going to have these dips and grooves, these divots in between the lead wire wraps. Because your thread is obviously much thinner and it'll naturally want to go in there. So this will give us a nice smooth platform to work with. So after taking our Bill's body braid and just wrapping it forward here, and wrapping it nice and tight. I like putting a little super glue to ensure that it's going to be durable, but we are going to wrap on top of it, so you can skip that step if you really want. We're just going to secure it down here and then wrap back so we can go ahead and tie our tail on here. So for the tail section, we're going to be using craft fur or polar fiber. I'm going to be using some Rainey's Select craft fur here. This is a very high quality craft fur that we covered before in the synthetics video. And I'm just going to tie in a healthy amount of this craft fur here for the tail section. Now Henry uses the polar fiber or craft fur specifically because it has some great movement as opposed to having just all flash and slinky as you're going to see here later on. One of the reasons why this material has such great action in the water is because it's so soft. So to help stiffen up the tail section and give us a pseudo spine, if you will, we're going to use some liquid fusion here. You could use some epoxy or resin and just kind of create a stiffer section in the material to where it's not going to foul on us. And one thing to note is I work with the fly while the liquid fusion is still wet. It's not harmful necessarily, just wash your hands after. You can have it drying up while you're working on the fly, it's not an issue. So now we've covered this fly using SF blends, but it's important to actually use the material that Henry uses. You can see here the Flash and Slinky. They both use Slinky fiber as the base material, but what it really comes down to is the amount of material and the blends that they use. So after talking to Henry, the Flash and Slinky here is 75% Slinky fiber, 25% of this other type of flash. It's a very nice flash, by the way. The name of it's blanking on me, but I'll see if I can remember. And the Steve Farrar fiber is about 75% angel hair and 25% Slinky fiber. So there's a difference between the blends. So taking some of our Flash and Slinky here, we're going to be using white for the belly and gray for the top section. And of course, the hook is flipped upside down, if you will, because we are using a jig hook, so keep that in mind. And we're going to go ahead and essentially tie the entire body section using V-ties here. So we've covered V-ties many times before, but we just tie it offset at an angle, and then we're able to fold it back and wrap on top. Now, one of the most important things, though, I want to point out here with this fly is tying the fly very sparsely. Very easy to take too much material with the synthetic, and you end up having just too much of this material on the fly in general, which you're going to have to trim off later on, just leading to the fly possibly not swimming right, and also just wasting material. So if you think you have enough material in there, take a little bit out. That's something I do every once in a while. If you're having a hard time struggling trying to find the right amount of material for your synthetic ties. But all we're going to do here is take this material and tie it on again, keeping in mind how much material we're using. And what you could do with the V-tie is just offset it back in the opposite direction, because again, we're tying it on offset, and then just wrap right on top. This is going to help create a kind of 3D body profile that'll help allow us to kind of shape the fly as we tie more material on. Now, something I like doing with all of my flies is applying a little bit of super glue. Generally at each step, you don't necessarily have to do it, but here I'm just going to show you we're going to apply a little bit of super glue on each step on our thread wrappings before we move on to the next one. So it's quite simple moving forward with this fly. All we're doing is essentially tapering down the length of the material. So we're slowly starting to shorten the length of the material for these first two ties. Keeping it somewhat long, obviously not longer than the craft fur, otherwise it's not going to have room to breathe. So we're going to take this second section, will be just slightly shorter than the first one. And after that, we're going to start drastically shortening the length of the material. And again, the V-ties are quite simple, just offset it back. Now, one thing to note is if you try and focus the material more on top and you fold it back on top of itself while still having it slightly offset, you can build more of a bunker profile. If you flare out your, angles of your material, I should say, when you're doing your V-ties, you can build up more of a 3D body and profile. So that is something to keep in mind when you're tying these flies. I'm kind of going for a medium mix here where I'm trying to focus maybe 60% of the material on top and 40 on the sides, if you will, by spreading it around. But you can adjust it to how you like to try and create the baitfish profile you're trying to imitate, for instance. So taking a little bit of super glue as usual and applying it to our thread wrapping in between our steps here just to make sure the fly is durable, we can move on to the next tie. So now for this third tie is where we really start shortening the length of the material. One thing I want to note is I always try and go a little bit longer on the top than I do the bottom. We are going to be trimming the fly when we're done, so you can err on the side of caution having it slightly longer. The main thing is try not to waste any material. And again, here you can see how sparse we're actually making this fly. Very small amount of material here, and it's starting to add up quickly, as you can see. So keeping it sparse is a key to this fly. And the other thing is, as you can see, trying to keep the thread wrappings even top and bottom, ensuring that our V-ties are even, will help give us a uniform body to the fly. So again, as we move forward, taking some super glue here and applying it to our thread wrapping so the fly is going to be nice and durable. You can see we're starting to really shorten the length of this flash and slinky here, especially for the belly section, being that we don't have any special weights like any scud weights or anything, or any dumbbell eyes. We want to ensure this fly is going to turn over. So by having a little bit more material on the top and having a little bit less on the bottom, it should help ensure that. Also, we are going to be trimming this in a way that we don't have a lot of material on the belly, so by keeping that material short, we're not going to be wasting any. So this is going to be our second to last tie here because we are running out of room. I don't want to build up too much material right by where the bend of the jig hook is. So we're going to go ahead and fold back our V-tie here and wrap this down and apply some super glue. And now we can add the kind of secret sauce to the fly. This is very important. You're not tying a Cowen's baitfish if you're not using the hot pink Fluro fiber. So you don't really need much of it as well, but there's something about this stuff. We've covered it in depth again in the synthetic video. You can check that out if you haven't. It kind of has this light and color changing property to it where it goes from pink to red to violet to purple, and it's really crazy. It's a special material. So by just going with a small amount of this stuff and kind of V-tying this on the throat section of the fly underneath, simulating the gills, we can add some of that secret juju. It's like taking, that special secret recipe of hot sauce or barbecue sauce and putting it on some ribs or something, right? So this is the special stuff here. So after applying our secret sauce of the hot pink Fluro fiber, we're going to go ahead and just tie our last V-tie collar here of the fly. We've been keeping it quite sparse on the belly, and thankfully, as you can see, it's a good thing we did because it adds up quick. Here I can go a little bit heavier, just ensuring that we kind of create a nice veil over that hot pink fluoro fiber, but again, keeping it quite short. Even though I'm saying add a little bit more, you can see it's still quite a sparse amount of material, and that's something that's important with this fly. It adds up quick. Just working with synthetics in general, it adds up very quickly, most synthetics. So we're going to go ahead and tie our last V-tie down here, and again, folding it back. It's important to keep your ties even top and bottom so that you don't have any uneven V-ties. Don't worry if you have a slight inconsistency in where your V-ties fold back, but try not to make a bad habit of doing it too often. So now I'm going to create a nice little transition from where our head is to the bend of the jig hook, just to kind of give us a nice little thread head here, and to kind of help shape the front section of the fly to make it a little bit more streamlined. And what you can do is you can kind of take the material at this point once it's all secure, and you can kind of pull it on the sides and manipulate it to get the material where you like it before you brush it and trim it. So now we could take our thread here and just throw a whip finish in here and cut this off. And after taking a brush and brushing it out and getting the fly kind of prepped for trimming, we can go ahead and get ready to shape the fly with our scissors. Again, you can use your thumbnail if you need to and go ahead and spread that material around. I like having a little bit of material on the sides, not too much. Again, most of the material top and bottom, but it is nice, like I said, having like 30 to 40% of the material on the sides, kind of creating that nice veil over the bill's body braid and the lead keel. So after taking my wastebasket here and getting it set up, I'm just going to start working on the fly. I've covered trimming synthetic flies a lot, but essentially just work slowly. You can't add material back on, and keep your scissors angled away. I usually start with the top and the bottom of the fly and slowly work with my scissors angled outwards. That way you don't cut too much by accident, and just start thinning the fly down to your personal preference. The way I usually do it is working on top and bottom first, and then I'll lay the fly on my hand on its side and start kind of thinning out the fly, if you will. Think if you're like working on a bush or something and you're just kind of thinning it out and just kind of randomly taking a little bit of material off the sides and the angles. Don't think of the fly in just 2D top and bottom. Also look at it from a 3D perspective for your trimming. So now that we've got the fly all trimmed up, we can go ahead and take some E6000 and our 3D eyes here and apply it to the fly. Any sort of 3D eyes will work, and the E6000 or the Loctite liquid seal, for instance, I believe that's what it's called, works quite well. So just by taking a healthy amount of it, not too much where it'll squeeze out when we push it. But we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of the E6000 first, ensuring it coats the back of the eye and it coats the section of the fly where we want to apply it. And then we can go ahead and put the eye on, pushing it down and then pushing it back. So we coat the whole section of the eye. The section of the body where the eye is going to be attaching has the glue fully spread. And then you want to push that eye down to where it's really kind of getting that glue pushed into the synthetic material and into the bill's body braid. The idea is you want the backside of the eye to be fully coated in that E6000 and giving you a nice strong bond with the synthetics. So now what you want to do is get your eyes all lined up before you let it dry. I always let the E6000 dry for preferably a day, but you can let it dry for 3 or 4 hours. And then make sure to press it down before you apply your liquid fusion, because it might expand a little bit. Now we can go ahead and take a little liquid fusion. This is going to give us a little backup or extra insurance to make sure the 3D eyes don't come off that easily and just make the fly that much more durable. You can skip this step if you want, but I found to increase the longevity of having the eyes stay on there a lot longer, using something like liquid fusion or even some UV resin and being very careful to make sure that you only touch up where the base of the eye meets the synthetic and not on any extra fibers, and where it meets the thread greatly increases the longevity of how long those 3D eyes stay on there. So now taking the liquid fusion and spreading it around evenly, including on the thread wrapping as well. This liquid fusion will dry very thinly. It's water-based as well. So it's not like UV resin where it'll build up and stay to that level once you hit it with the light. This is going to thin down nice and give us just a nice strong coat over our eyes and threads. The main thing is you want to let this dry for probably at least 24 hours before fishing it. If you fish it too early, you'll see that it might develop this sort of cloudy color to it when it hasn't fully dried, because it is water-based. So just let it fully dry and it'll be ready to fish. Well, there we go. There's the Henry Cowen's baitfish, but in jig hook form. I actually had somebody message me. Henry passed their information to me. They wanted some flies because they saw Henry tie some of these recently. And I figured it was a good fly to cover because you can just essentially take certain flies, really any fly, and convert it to a fly that swims upside down by using a jig hook. This fly particularly takes very well to it because of the materials work very well when flipping it upside down. The lead keel in particular is helping keeping it tracking right here. It's not only a great fly when the hook point's riding down, it's a great fly when the hook point's riding up. And you can see the action of that craft fur. It's important to make sure that synthetic material doesn't stick past the craft fur so that craft fur has enough room to breathe, for instance. Well, there we go. That's the Henry Cowen's baitfish, but in jig hook form. We still have yet to cover the Magnum baitfish. That's the big daddy. That's the one that you want to throw under some bunker pods when you're ready to catch some cows. So we'll be covering that here at some point now that I actually have the right material for it. Well, thank you so much for watching. It's very close to fishing season, so not only are we going to have a ton of fly tying videos, hopefully we're going to have some fishing content here in the near future. Well, thank you so much to all of our Twitch subs and YouTube members. The support means a lot. Couldn't do without you folks. And thank you so much to everyone that watches the channel here. Just tuning in and dropping a like on the video really helps out, so thank you so much. If you're new here, we have fly tying and fly fishing content coming out every week. We have live fly tying on Friday nights and early access for members. Well, thank you so much for watching. Again, have a great season out there this year with the fishing season coming up soon. And as always, tight lines.